Hello, it's the 23rd of May and you're tuned into our afternoon newscast of Arirang News. I'm Kwon Jang-ho and thank you for joining us. President Moon Jae-in met with President Trump in Washington on Tuesday, with the North Korea-U.S. summit at the forefront of their discussions. However, their meeting began with President Donald Trump throwing further doubt on the summit taking place, saying that there is a very substantial chance that it won't work out and that it could be postponed from the scheduled June 12th date. That's now less than 3 weeks away, but as North Korea proved once again today after accepting South Korean journalists to cover the shutdown of its nuclear test site tomorrow finally, it remains difficult to predict how things will play out. We will discuss these developments with an expert in the studio later, but first we turn to our news centre, where Devin Whiting has the latest news updates. Devin?
Hi, Jung-ho. As you referenced, South Korean reporters have now arrived in the North Korean city of Wonsan on the peninsula's east coast. It's the same place where the rest of the international press from the U.S., China, Russia, and the U.K. have been staying. The regime, after several days of uncertainty, finally accepted the list of South Korean reporters who had been initially invited to go and witness the dismantling of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. For more on this, we connect live to our Lee Ji-won at the Foreign Ministry. So, Ji-won, what's the latest?
8 South Korean reporters whose North Korean visas had not been confirmed due to friction between the two Koreas finally got the green light from Pyongyang this morning and arrived in Wonsan at around 2 p.m. The reporters departed from the Seoul Air Base in Seongnam at around noon on a government aircraft flying over the East Sea straight to Wonsan. And though it was a rough process, the South Korean press corps shows they were prepared and going with a sense of responsibility.
We will be witnessing the first step of the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula as representatives of South Korea's combined press corps. We will do our best to report on everything happening on the site quickly and accurately.
All right, Ji-won, so they're in Wonsan, as are the foreign reporters. What's the schedule now? When are they going to head to the test site? And I understand it's supposed to be a pretty arduous trip.
Yes, Devin. Well, according to Sky News correspondent Tom Cheshire, a British reporter who is one of the international journalists on the trip, the team had been told that they will be getting on their train to Punggye-ri today. The plan had been postponed from last night until this morning, supposedly due to bad weather, but they still haven't left yet. The journey to the northeastern test site, some 500 kilometers away, is not going to be easy, with a train ride of some 12 hours, followed by another 4-hour bus ride and a 2-hour hike to the site. What we can expect for now is that the reporters will spend the night on the train if they leave today and watch the blowing up of the test site hopefully on Thursday, and then come back to Wonsan, where a press center has been set up for the reporters to work in. That's all from me for now, but I'll be back with more updates later. Devin?
All right, thank you for that. Lee Ji-won at the Foreign Ministry. Now on Tuesday in Washington, South Korean President Moon Jae-in met with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. And with the American leader due to meet North Korea's Kim Jong-un in a few weeks' time, they agreed to work to make sure that summit is hosted as scheduled and that it's a success. Our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun reports from Washington.
Shortly before the one-on-one meeting between the leaders of South Korea and the U.S., the American leader expressed that he isn't hung up on whether or not the Pyongyang-Washington summit will take place on June 12th.
I don't want to waste a lot of time, and I'm sure he doesn't want to waste a lot of time. So there's a very substantial chance that it won't work out, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it won't work out over a period of time, but it may not work out for June 12th.
Trump's remarks come amid North Korea's recent threat to cancel the Singapore summit if the U.S. continues its, quote, one-sided affair of pressuring Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program. However, President Trump said he thinks the scheduled meeting with Kim Jong-un will be a great meeting for North Korea and for the world. He said the U.S. is continuing talks with North Korea and that it's up to the regime to seize the opportunity to become a great country, also telling reporters that they will know pretty soon whether or not the one-on-one with the North Korean leader will take place. President Moon insisted that there's no reason to doubt North Korea's willingness to hold a summit with the U.S., and Washington should not merely expect failure just because talks with North Korea have failed before.
예, 최근의 북한의 태도 변화 때문에 이 북미 정상회담이 이렇게 제대로 열릴 수 있을지 걱정하는 그런 분들도 있는데 저는 북미 정상회담이 예정대로 제대로 열릴 것이라고 확신합니다.
Despite the U.S. skepticism over the North's commitment to the summit and its denuclearization, President Trump said he considers his South Korean counterpart to be extremely competent and as someone who can help the U.S. reach a deal with Pyongyang.
How much confidence and trust do you have in my president in playing the mediator role in resolving this North Korea issue and the denuclearization process?
I have great confidence in your president. I think that he's brought a different perspective to the talks with North Korea. And I think that his way, the way he is, really is helping us to potentially make a deal.
Soon after the private one-on-one session, President Moon's chief press secretary briefed reporters on the results of the bilateral summit, saying President Moon and President Trump agreed to cooperate to hold the Singapore summit as scheduled.
President Moon and President Trump agreed to do their utmost so the North Korea-U.S. summit, scheduled for June 12, will be held without any disruption.
Yoon even said the two presidents discussed ways to remove possible concerns held by North Korea over its safety and security. So it seems President Moon was able to get President Trump back on the same page as him. Before returning back to Seoul, President Moon made a brief visit to the opening ceremony of the restored former Korean Empire Legation Building in Washington, D.C., an equivalent to today's Korean Embassy in the United States from 1891 to 1905. According to the Blue House, the building symbolizes and illustrates the Korean Empire's desperate efforts to maintain independence and national sovereignty.
When the legation building first opened here in Washington, Korea at the time was caught in a maelstrom of rapid diplomatic changes. 130 years later, a tug-of-war among nations continues yet, this time surrounding the issue of North Korea's denuclearization. President Moon's visit to the old legation building highlights not only the historical significance of bilateral ties between Seoul and Washington, but also his determination to fortify the ironclad alliance and partnership with the U.S. as he voyages through the ever-changing diplomatic terrain. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News, Washington.
Now, President Trump has echoed those doubts over whether his summit with Kim Jong-un will take place, but his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has taken a more optimistic view. He pledged on Tuesday that the U.S. will do its best to make sure the summit does work out. Our Cha Sang-mi tells us more.
Speaking to reporters at the State Department on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he hasn't seen anything to give the Trump administration, quote, pause about the scheduled June 12th summit.
We're preparing, we're continuing to do our work and lay the foundation for a successful meeting. I'm confident we'll get there. With respect to Chairman Kim, I haven't spoken publicly about the conversations we've had.
Pompeo's remarks came a matter of hours after President Trump suggested the summit may not take place next month in Singapore. President Moon Jae-in had earlier met with Pompeo and U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton as his first official itinerary in Washington. According to pool reports, President Moon expressed his appreciation for President Trump's top advisors for foreign affairs and national security as they prepare for the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington summit.
두 분은 미국의 외교와 안보에서 아주 핵심적인 역할을 맡고 계신데 특히 한국으로서는 우리 한국이나 한반도의 어떤 운명이나 미래를 좌우하는 그런 중요한 시기이기 때문에 우리 한국 국민들이 두 분에게 가는 기대가 아주 큽니다.
During their 50-minute-long meeting, President Moon called on Pompeo and Bolton to speed up preparations to make the Pyongyang-Washington summit a successful one that ultimately puts all parties on the road to the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. In response, the U.S. official said the Kim-Trump meeting was their highest priority, and they are looking forward to working alongside South Korea to achieve a really good outcome with North Korea. Regarding the recent negative shift in tone from Pyongyang, President Moon stressed that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's determination to hold a successful summit with the U.S. is resolute nevertheless. The meeting came a couple of hours before President Moon sat down for his face-to-face with President Trump in the Oval Office. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
It's unclear how far North Korea and the US have come behind the scenes in their negotiations towards denuclearization. However, one promise Trump emphatically stated again on Tuesday is the safety of the Kim regime once it takes the path of complete and verifiable denuclearization. Park Hee-jun has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump has once again reiterated his stance on North Korea's denuclearization. During his press conference with South Korean President Moon Jae-in on Tuesday, Trump said that should North Korean leader Kim Jong-un decide on CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization, his regime will be well protected and guaranteed economic rewards.
I will guarantee his safety, yes. We will guarantee his safety. And we've talked about that from the beginning. He will be safe. He will be happy. His country will be rich. His country will be hardworking and very prosperous. They're very great people. They're hardworking, great people.
Trump also said he preferred an all-in-one denuclearization than an incremental one combined with incentives. However, he said as there may be physical obstacles, it would be good for the process to be done over a very short time frame. During a briefing following the White House meeting, top presidential press secretary Yoon Young-chan said stabilizing the North Korean regime was a key agenda during the Moon-Trump talks, and that President Moon called for practical and specific solutions. He also said the two leaders discussed ways on how the two Koreas and the United States should declare a permanent end to the Korean War, as agreed upon in the Panmunjom Declaration. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, joining us in the studio to go over these latest developments is Dr. Woo Jung-yup, a research fellow at the Sejong Institute. Dr. Woo, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Now, let's start with that Moon-Trump summit. It seems to have gone quite smoothly. They said they will work towards making the North Korea-U.S. summit happen, but Trump was far more cagey on whether it will actually happen. He suggested that it might be delayed. What was your takeaway from the Moon-Trump meeting?
First, the positive aspect of the summit this time is that once again, two leaders have confirmed that two countries will go together and sharing the goal of the denuclearization of North Korea. And as you just mentioned, that it's a bit surprising that President Trump took the questions from the media when it was supposed to be a private meeting between two leaders, and answered the question. In answering the question, he mentioned that he has a doubt on North Korea's attitude on denuclearization, and it might not work out as it planned. That means that the summit on June 12th might not going to happen. And he also said that it can be delayed if it can be delayed. So he cast the doubts on the happening of the June 12th summit. So we have to see what kind of discussions will go on between North Korea and the United States in like 3 weeks.
So those discussions, I'm sure the US and North Korea are having behind-the-scenes discussions about the denuclearization and the agreement they're going to reach at the summit. But one thing, interesting comment that Trump made at this press briefing, this impromptu press briefing with Moon, was he was asked whether he would go for an incremental or an all-in-one, big deal style of denuclearization deal. He said, quote, "It would certainly be better if it was all in one, but does it have to be? I don't think I want to totally commit myself." Now, how should we take that comment? Should we see it as Trump backtracking from demanding CVID, or is it just an offhand remark that he made to the press and something we shouldn't take too seriously?
I think CVID is the goal, and what President Trump mentioned today is how to achieve the CVID. Because China and South Korea's concern was that while we are sharing the goal of CVID, but how to achieve CVID might be different. So when President Trump's national security advisor, Mr. John Bolton, mentioned Libyan model, many people thought that United States is going to reward North Korea's denuclearization after international community confirmed that there is no more nuclear weapons on North Korea and no more nuclear program in North Korea. That means that nuclear denuclearization has to be done before United States and international community rewards North Korea in economic terms. So I think that the incremental terms or whether all-in-one method is about how to reward North Korea if North Korea moves to the direction of denuclearization. So I really don't think that United States is going to hold a rewarding North Korea when North Korea is moving in the direction of denuclearization. So once U.S. can confirm that North Korea is in the direction of denuclearization, U.S. can give reward, whether it's a lift of sanctions or ease of sanctions or giving some economic aid. They can give by the progress of the denuclearization process. So I don't think that President Trump is backing off from the goal of CVID, but I think he shows some flexibility of how to achieve the CVID.
One of the promises that Trump seems to also be making, as we saw in that last report, was the guaranteeing the safety of the North Korean regime. Now, he seemed to be very emphatic about that. Do you think this is what North Korea wants to hear, and will it help with the negotiations, do you think?
First, I think we have to be clear that what President Trump mentioned today is Kim's safety, and he reiterated that he will be safe. So considering the character of the nature of the North Korean regime, Kim Jong-un might be the North Korean regime itself. However, we cannot say that in democratized system, the leader's safety is not same as the regime or system's safety. So when President Trump mentioned that Kim is going to be safe, I'm not sure whether he will be different. He differentiated the difference between Kim Jong-un himself and the regime itself. So even though U.S. policy is not to change the regime, North Korean regime, but U.S. has never said that they are going to guarantee the regime itself. So I think that we have to be very careful in interpreting what President Trump said today. And I really don't think that North Korea has requested North Korean regime's survival in exchange for its giving up nuclear weapons. So I think that North Korea has never requested that kind of rewarding formally. So we have to see what North Korea really wants if they are going to denuclearize itself.
Trump said that the North Korea-U.S. summit, will happen eventually if it doesn't happen this time on June 12th. That's what he seemed to imply. But his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, had a very different tone and said that later the summit is still on track for June 12th. What is going on here? Who do we have to listen to here at this position right now?
I think it's going to be ultimately President Trump's call, even if Secretary Pompeo said it's going to be on track. So we hope and we have a reason to believe that it's still not canceled, and we have to see that what kind of discussions will be going on between the United States and North Korea to finally confirm that the meeting between Trump and Kim will finally going to happen. Because now U.S. has a lot of skepticism on North Korea's sincerity on denuclearizing itself. I believe that United States has seen some progress in North Korea in dealing with North Korea by two visits by Secretary Pompeo in Pyongyang. But very recent announcement by North Korea since May 16th, the negative announcement on CVID and negative announcement on Ambassador John Bolton made the United States and the President Trump to think twice on the sincerity of North Korea's willingness to denuclearize itself. So I think we have to see until we can confirm the meeting, whether the meeting will be held or not.
The US President also made another passing comment, another passing allegation, should we say, that Chinese President Xi Jinping has exerted some influence on Kim Jong-un's to change Pyongyang's attitude towards Washington. Is this allegation fair, do you think?
So one of the concerns that US government has in this process was that China might work as a spoiler of the event. because China's strategic interest might be keeping the status quo on Northeast Asia, and denuclearization of North Korea is actually changing the status quo. So U.S. had a concern that China wants to keep the status quo. That means China is going to embolden the North Korea, that North Korea is not going to actually give up the nuclear weapon. So I think that from what President Trump mentioned before, that North Korea has shown to the United States that it's willing to discuss with the United States about denuclearization of North Korea. But suddenly, after the second visit of Kim Jong-un to China, North Korea's attitude has been changed. That is why President Trump argued that China's role is influencing North Korea in a negative way.
Now, another major development that came out today was, of course, the South Korean journalists have now finally been given the green light to witness the shutdown of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. They certainly kept the South Korean press waiting to the last minute. But what do you think made Pyongyang change their mind about this decision? Was it possibly something that came out of the U.S.-South Korea summit with Moon and Trump? Or was it just North Korea trying to make some sort of statement that they're reminding them that this path necessarily won't be easy right now?
There was no positive element for North Korea after the Moon-Trump summit this time. It is for sure that President Moon tried to encourage President Trump about the summit, but no tangible word came out from the President Trump about on North Korea's safety or economic benefits or the process of denuclearization. So I think that the bigger impact actually came from South Korea's public opinion. South Korean public opinion turned bad toward North Korea's decision this time that after Panmunjom Declaration on April 27th, many South Koreans believed that North Korea's attitude would be different from the past. But the way that North Korea treated South Korean government and South Korean media was not different from the past. So now South Korean public has a second thought on North Korea's changing behavior. I think that might have a bigger impact than the President Moon and President Trump summit this time.
It did seem they were being a little bit petty almost towards the South Korean media and the South Korean press. At least this means that the shutting down of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site is going to happen then?
I believe so. The shutting down of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site was not a part of deal between North Korea and the international community or between North Korea and South Korea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wanted to show its willingness to move in the denuclearization by unilaterally deciding that he's going to shut down the Punggye-ri test site. So I think that that means that North Korea is not just calling off the meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un in June. So he's going to show to the world that they are the one who can be worked with.
Now, President Moon today, he also said that he expects the Inter-Korean summit, the high-level, not the summit, sorry, the high-level talks to conclude restart after the 25th. Now, they were originally scheduled for last week, as I'm sure you're well aware. Pyongyang, of course, cancelled it at the last minute, citing the Max Thunder joint military drills. Now, Max Thunder will be ending around the 25th, so is it just coincidence, or does President Moon know something that we don't, and that he's prepared to reveal that North Korea is willing to come back to talks?
We don't know yet, and I'm not sure whether North Korean secretly told our government that they are interested in resuming the talks after 25th. But one thing for sure is that after the Max Thunder drills, that it will be easier for North Korean government to justify their changing behavior. So since they called off the meeting and citing the Max Thunder was the reason, it's difficult for them to resume the talks while the Max Thunder drills are still continuing. So I think that President Moon's expectation is that after the Max Thunder drill is done, then North Korea can have some saving face or justifying their changing the behavior to resume the talks with the South Korea.
Well, thank you, Professor. That's all the time we have for you today. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thought.
Thank you.
Now, that's our show for now. Hope you can join us again next time as we bring you the latest news updates from Korea and the rest of the world. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Go for a new look if you're in Korea. Get trendy here in Garosu-gil. A shopping spree in Myeongdong is a must.